Greetings and welcome to the course TALG. We call it Teaching and Learning in General Programs. Why is it necessary that we need to worry about teaching and learning in today's context? People have been teaching for decades at all levels in all types of courses, but yet we need to take a relook at how we have been teaching and how we are facilitating learning. And that is the main purpose of this course. And we call them general programs. It is a convention that we are trying to follow, namely the professional programs like medicine, engineering, they are all different, well defined, but we have programs in like BA, BSc, BCom, 3 years, 4 years and so on. And the graduates of these programs do not necessarily seek careers in the discipline where they have graduated. So, we call all of them these BA, BSc, BCom or similar programs like BBA and so on. We call them as general programs. It is a convention, not anything that is formally defined by any agency. The requirements of general programs in the Indian context are somewhat different from the professional programs that we have. Why do we require to take a look at this? First thing is, that is, we are trying to see why is there a need for a course like this. First thing that happened is, there is a shift to learner-centric education. Even today, most of the ways that a course is taught in any higher education institution is dominantly teacher-centric. It is not that we are not saying teachers are not interested in students' learning, but all decisions, the way it is taught, or what is to be taught, how it is to be evaluated, everything is decided by the teacher. Even in the new context, it will also be decided by the teacher. But why we call it learner-centric education is that we are interested in finding out, determining to what extent the learners have learned. It is not that if I give inputs, there is no guarantee the students have learned the way the teacher wanted. And as the students have different abilities, different contexts, different courses, the controlling the input alone will not necessarily lead to good learning by all students. So, learner-centric education means now you start with the learner. These are the types of learners I have, and this is what they need to learn, and how do I design and conduct my course. That is what is meant by learner-centric education. We will elaborate this lot more in the later units. Now, we have several new requirements compared to the earlier era. Now, it is already 7-8 years old now. Accreditation and outcome based education became the foci of higher education in India since 2015. There are two, one is accreditation, the other is outcome based education. The accreditation, that is all institutions offering general programs have to be accredited by the agency National Assessment and Accreditation Council, otherwise called as NAC. The institutions have to be accredited, and NAC now requires, especially since 2017, all general higher education programs, they have to attain program outcomes and program specific outcomes identified by the autonomous institutions, or the universities. This is very concretely written in the NAAC accreditation procedures. We will be elaborating what these program outcomes and program specific outcomes in later units, but what one has to remember, higher education programs have to be conducted and in a way that the institutions are accredited by NAAC, as well as the learner centricity is achieved through what we call outcome based education. Okay. So, all teaching and learning activities in higher education institution should be planned and conducted to facilitate the students attain well defined and measurable outcomes. This is a new requirement for faculty members of all HEIs, whatever institution talk about, because it was never planned in this particular context earlier. So, TALG is designed to facilitate teachers meet these requirements. That is the purpose of TALG. Now, this course aims at enabling the teachers. Now, this is mainly meant for teachers in higher education programs to facilitate their students to become good graduates in the current context. The goal is the students of higher education programs have to become good graduates. Who are good graduates? That is also to be defined by the university and the institute. This course is offered as 20 units of about half-hour video lectures. Generally, there is an assignment every week. Okay. And this course will be useful to the working teachers in all higher education institutions offering general programs like BA, BSc, BCom, etc. of 3-year or 4-year duration. The 4-year duration general programs are continuously increasing in the country. This course will also be useful to aspiring teachers, graduate students who wish to make careers in education technology, companies offering education technology products and training programs to corporates, educational institutes and teachers and students. Because there is a lot of teaching and learning that takes place in corporate world as well. So, those who are trying to, there are several companies that offer such programs. It will also be useful for the staff of such companies. I would like to acknowledge the inputs and comments given by Professor K. Rajinikanth, with whom I have been interacting for several years, and also this is the result of conducting a large number of OBE workshops where hundreds of faculty participated, and we learned significantly from the inputs given by them. We would like to acknowledge their contributions in this. Now, let us start with what do graduates of general programs do. For example, graduates of professional programs, generally there is no ambiguity. For example, graduate of a program like MBBS, predominantly 99% of them will become doctors. An engineering program if you take, yes, predominantly they will become, they seek careers in something related to engineering. Whereas with respect to general programs, you have a much wider range of things, wider range of career paths. They may choose to go for higher education in the same discipline or some other discipline that is possible these days. they can become researchers or provide research and development services to in companies or organizations. They can become teachers, become administrators, they become entrepreneurs, and also they go to professional programs, MBA for example, or services like IAS, IPS and IRS, etc. So, there is a much wider range of career paths for graduates of general programs. Besides, you should remember that a UG program is the terminal formal education program for majority of the graduates. So, you cannot take it for granted a BA graduate will necessarily go for MA or BSc to MSc, things like that. Something like maybe 20 to 30% of graduates are likely to go for higher education or other types of programs. And now we also have to now formally understand who is a good graduate. Now one can define who is a good graduate from all, we can have our own opinions, we can ask companies which employ them, or we can debate. But if you look at especially from the employer's perspective, they all expect the graduate to have sound knowledge of a discipline, whatever discipline is graduating from, physics, chemistry or economics, mathematics, anything, they would expect them to have sound knowledge of that discipline. There is no excuse on that. And in real world, you have to have the ability to solve well defined problems in your discipline or ill defined problems. Most of the time the problems are not that very well defined. Like in a formal program, we always look at solving end of the chapter problems, which are well defined problems. But generally when you work in real world, the problem itself is not very well defined. That is why we will call them ill defined problems. And now whatever activity that you do, you are working to meet someone else's requirements, whether it is in administration or in a research lab or you are working in a company selling products. Whatever you do, you have to meet the requirements of somebody else, and we call them customers. So, awareness of customers' needs is one of the good characteristics of a good graduates. And in any organization where you work, a graduate works, they never work alone. They have to work with a team of people. Not at your level, there is a hierarchy. So, you have to work with superiors, you have to work with the people working under you or with your colleagues. So, you are always working in a team. So, ability to work in a team is one of the characteristics that every graduate should acquire, formally or informally. And another one, you have to communicate. Whatever you are doing, you have to communicate to your colleagues or to your superiors. The kind of communication that takes place will be different for different groups of people. So, you should have the ability to document, plan and communicate effectively in all forms, both oral and written form. Without that, one can never be a good graduate nor a good employee. Whatever job that you take, even if you become an administrative assistant in a government organization, things continuously change. Either rules change, technology changes, the kind of activities keep on getting redefined. So, what happens, there is no way one can learn all the things that are required through a formal program. So, one needs to have a willingness and ability to learn on the job. Continuously you should be willing to learn. You cannot say that I have completed my learning once I graduate and I do not have to learn anything. One cannot take the stand, especially in today's technology scenario. And the other one is having an interest and awareness in all facets of the workspace, whatever workspace that you have. Whatever organization that you work or whatever section in an office that you work with, it is a part of a much bigger context, and the context keeps changing. So, what happens suddenly, you must have been seeing in today's what you call worldwide, jobs get terminated, so many people get find new opportunities come which require a different technology and so on. So, if you want to protect your own career, you have to have an awareness of all facets of the workspace. Now, just formally saying, general programs are required to impart knowledge, skills and attitudes. Of course, third one is a little more difficult, and to facilitate the graduates of 12th standard to acquire the characteristics of a good graduate. Okay, that is what general programs do. Now, there is certain structure to formal programs in India. Things have been evolving in the last few decades. There are so many changes that are taking place. Still more changes are taking place. As of now, the higher education formal programs can be 2 to 4 year duration and offered in 2 semesters per year. They carry a predefined credit load. The number of credits associated with a program initially by UGC, and maybe they get slightly modified by the university or the institute, but still the understanding of what constitutes a credit, what is credit load, there is a less of understanding in the case of formal general programs. Whereas in engineering programs there appears to be much better understanding of what constitutes a credit, but we will elaborate that a little bit later. And every program has some well defined curricular components, because when you look at a program, it is not just a mere collection of some arbitrary courses. There is a structure to that. Every curriculum has some curricular components, like these days we call them as sometimes they call them liberal education part or common core part or professional core, electives and so on. You have several curricular components. The names of these curricular components may differ slightly from one institute to the other. And all institutions have predefined assessment procedures, have predefined methods of grading. These are all, and even here some changes have taken place in the recent past, which regularly the University Grants Commission keeps communicating to the universities. Okay. So, that is the nature of formal programs. Now, coming to higher education general programs in India, undergraduate general programs predominantly are 3-year duration, and the number of 4-year undergraduate programs is increasing. There is a new normal that is getting created. Every institute is now announcing, or at least many institutions are announcing, a 3-year degree version, and if you do one more year, they will give you another label like BSc Honours or BCom with something additional and so on. So, the 4-year UG programs are are increasing in their number now. And these higher education programs are to be designed and conducted as per the guidelines provided by the UGC from time to time. UGC has been changing. There are so many changes taking place at the government level right now, and directives are being given, and most of the programs belonging to this category have disciplinary emphasis. Okay. What do you mean by disciplinary emphasis? If you are doing BSc Physics, what do you call, more than 50 to 60% of the credits are earmarked for that particular discipline, namely physics. And this is where the changes are required to take place, which we will not be elaborating too much on that, but we will mention about that in the context of NEP, New Education Policy. Now, all of you must have heard about NEP 2020. In 2020, New Education Policy has been announced by the government, and they are very strongly emphasizing that all facets of NEP 2020 are met, and they are setting up targets for the institutions to move towards that. Now, we will not be elaborating on NEP 2020 here, but these are the key features. All institutions have to move towards an educational system consisting of large multidisciplinary universities and colleges. That is the goal. Though still we are new institutions which have very narrow spectrum of disciplines are still getting created, but all of them have to eventually move towards multidisciplinary universities and colleges. And moving towards a more multidisciplinary and holistic undergraduate education. Okay. What we have to define what is meant by multidisciplinary and holistic. If you take these two, the structure of many undergraduate programs have to be reviewed and redesigned. Moving towards faculty and institutional autonomy. At present, a significant percentage, very large percentage of institutions are affiliated to a university, and there is hardly any institutional and faculty autonomy. So, the NEP 2020 expects that you slowly over a period of time you move towards faculty and institutional autonomy, and revamping curriculum, pedagogy, assessment and student support for enhanced student experiences. You are required to take a relook at all of them. Okay. The TALG at least will look at what the pedagogical portion of that through the framework of outcome based education, and reaffirming the integrity of faculty and institutional leadership. These are some key changes envisioned by NEP 2020. And now, as we are operating in outcome based education, we have to define what are the expected outcomes of this TALG course. That is why we label it as CO1, CO2 like that. CO is course outcome. Every course should have a set of course outcomes. We will define that more formally later. CO1, understand the nature of outcome based education, accreditation by the NAC, and the outcomes of higher education general programs. That is one of the outcomes. Understand the 3 domains of learning, including cognitive, affective and psychomotor, and particularly the revised Bloom taxonomy of cognitive domain. Write course outcomes of a course in a general program. Compute the attainment of course outcomes, program outcomes and program specific outcomes. So, when you complete this course, you will be able to meet most of the requirements as prescribed by NAAC. Okay. Now, outcome based education can be presented through this kind of a concept map. What is it? Outcome based education of this course requires an understanding of characteristics of good graduates, and we also expect the words like education, teaching, learning, instruction, assessment. While we seem to be familiar with these words, we may not be using them in a very technically correct way. So, we will spend some time in clarifying these terms, and then an understanding of outcome based education, levels of outcomes in general programs and role of accreditation. And then we spend a lot of time on revised Bloom's taxonomy of learning. There are several taxonomies, but in India by default or by general acceptance, revised Bloom taxonomy is the what you call commonly used taxonomy of learning. And this includes writing of program outcomes, program specific outcomes and course outcomes. And it also includes computation of the COs, course outcomes, POs, program outcomes, PSOs, program specific outcomes. Okay. In the unit 2, we will explain the familiar words education and teaching. Okay, that is what we will be doing. Thank you very much.